His Majesty King Abdullah II, His Excellency President Sisi, His Excellency Mr. Antonio Guterres, Secretary General of the United Nations, Highnesses, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon and Assalamu alaikum. We are meeting at the shadows of the gravest crimes committed since the Second World War, Israel's ongoing 8 months genocide and the military aggression in Gaza has killed more than 37,000 Palestinians, injured over 84,500, with a disproportionate number being women and children, and displacing the entire 2.3 million residents of Gaza. Excellencies, Israel has acted with complete impunity and utter disregard for international law, the UN chapter and the Charter, and the collective will of the international community. Starvation has been employed as a tool of warfare. Humanitarian supplies and life-saving assistance have been impeded. Civilian infrastructure, homes, schools, hospitals, aid convoys, and humanitarian shelters have been willfully targeted and destroyed. Until now, Israel has refused the calls by the UN General Assembly, by the UN Security Council, by the International Court of Justice, and OIC, even by his own friends and partners, to halt its massacre of innocents. Ladies and gentlemen, the brutal and indiscriminate suffering imposed by Israel on an entire population has been termed as plausible genocide by the International Court of Justice. And the present Israeli leadership has refused this two-state solution. Their objective appears to be to expel the Palestinians again from their homeland and impose a Jewish state final solution. Highnesses, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, Pakistan strongly and unequivocally condemns these Israeli atrocities. The government and the people of Pakistan stand in complete solidarity with their Palestinian brethren in these testing times. We have dispatched over 8 plane loads carrying over 2,000 tons of humanitarian assistance for our brethren trapped in Gaza since last October, and will continue to send these relief goods and assistance as long as required. Excellencies, like many of our fellow Muslim countries, we draw hope from the adoption of the UN Security Council Resolution 2735 last night, which welcomes the new ceasefire proposal announced on 31st of May by the US President, Mr. Joe Biden. We hope that the resolution would lead to a permanent and sustainable ceasefire, bringing much-needed peace to the Gaza Strip. We also hope that it would facilitate the safe and effective distribution of humanitarian assistance throughout the Gaza Strip and would ensure the protection of all Palestinians. Excellencies, at this critical juncture, we must undertake concrete steps to effectively redress the situation. One, we must ensure the ceasefire called for by the UN Security Council is complete, durable, and unconditional. It must also halt the violence in the West Bank. Number two, we should step up the provision of humanitarian assistance to beleaguered Palestinians in Gaza and meet their needs for food, medicines, energy, and other essential supplies. We need to enlarge our support for United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestine refugees in the Near East and respond to the flash appeal issued by the UN in April. The demonization of UNRWA and the UN must be halted. All donors who have suspended support to UNRWA must reverse their decisions, and all others should enhance their assistance. Ladies and gentlemen, number 3, we must call for an embargo on all military supplies and sales to Israel. Number 4, we must ensure the immediate withdrawal of Israeli occupation forces from Gaza in accordance with Resolution 2735. We should also consider the deployment of an impartial international force for the protection of Palestinian civilians in Gaza and the West Bank. Excellencies, Pakistan proposes that a comprehensive plan for the reconstruction of Gaza should be prepared following the UN Resolution 2735. Pakistan will be happy to be partner in the reconstruction process of the educational institutions in Gaza. Excellencies, in parallel, we must work to implement the two-state solution, which has again been endorsed by the Security Council resolution. We strongly oppose any demographic or territorial change in Gaza. In this context, and as an important step, it is time to secure the immediate admission of the State of Palestine as a full member of the United Nations. This will ensure the irreversibility of the two-state solution, the only option for durable peace and security in the Holy Land. Highnesses, Excellencies and ladies and gentlemen, Pakistan also supports the calls for an international peace conference to work out a timetable and roadmap for implementing the two-state solution. Apart from members of the Security Council, this process should include the participation of key Arab and OIC countries. Excellencies, we are at a defining moment in history. The Palestinians have endured historic injustice for almost a century. We must strive to end their sufferings. We must enable them to exercise their inalienable right to self-determination, and we must help them to live in freedom as a free, independent and sovereign people with a state within the pre-1967 borders and a liberated Al-Quds Al-Sharif as its capital. Excellencies, as a non-permanent member of the United Nations Security Council for the term 2025-26, Pakistan will seek to advance peace, prosperity and development in the world, particularly resolution of the long-standing conflicts, especially the Palestinian issue. I thank you all.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Prime Minister. If you allow me to remind us all of the time limits for under 3 minutes, the speeches. Thank you. بتشرف بإعطاء الكلمة الآن لمعالي وزير خارجية مملكة البحرين الشقيقة الدكتور عبد اللطيف بن راشد الزياني.
شكرا معالي الرئيس. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. جلالة الملك عبد الله الثاني بن الحسين، فخامة الرئيس عبد الفتاح السيسي، معالي السيد أنطونيو غوتيريس، أصحاب الفخامة والسمو والمعالي والسعادة، الحضور الكرام، السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. يشرفني بداية أن أنقل إليكم تحيات وتقدير صاحب الجلالة الملك حمد بن عيسى آل خليفة ملك مملكة البحرين، وتمنيات جلالته بالنجاح والتوفيق لهذه المبادرة الإنسانية الخيرة، ونعرب عن اعتزاز المملكة بالمشاركة في هذا المؤتمر الذي ينعقد في مرحلة حرجة وظرف دقيق يستدعي رفع المعاناة عن المدنيين الأبرياء في قطاع غزة، والوقف الفوري والدائم لإطلاق النار في كامل القطاع، مؤكدين ضرورة العمل الدولي الجماعي لمعالجة الأزمة الإنسانية المتفاقمة في غزة. إن مملكة البحرين بتوجيهات جلالة الملك المعظم وحرص متابعة الحكومة الموقرة برئاسة صاحب السمو الملكي ولي العهد رئيس مجلس الوزراء ملتزمة بدعم الجهود الإنسانية في غزة، والدعوة إلى تنفيذ القرارات الدولية وتعزيز الدعم للمنظمات الإنسانية وتسهيل جهود الإغاثة المنسقة. وفي هذا السياق قامت المملكة ممثلة بالمؤسسة الملكية للأعمال الإنسانية
has called, and with collaboration with Jordan and Egypt, has called for the action to be taken to alleviate the humanitarian crisis in Gaza and to end the situation. And we are calling for the immediate ceasefire and peace in the region. And according to the last resolution announced by US President Joe Biden, Kingdom of Bahrain welcomes this resolution and the United Nations Security Resolution, which has passed the US ceasefire proposal and the call for the humanitarian aid for Palestinian civilians and the need for both Israel and Hamas to accept this resolution and follow all international laws in the hope that this will end the suffering of the innocent Palestinian civilians. All the resolutions that have been offered before, including one by the Kingdom of Bahrain, which has also called for the two-state solution, security of Palestine and sustainable livelihood. And Bahrain has even said it is willing to host this summit alongside other efforts of the Kingdom of Bahrain to support Palestinians and the Palestinian brethren, including things related to health, facilitation, education, as well as assistance of civilians. And the Kingdom of Bahrain is calling upon the international community to please accept calls for peace and the ceasefire and a peaceful resolution to the situation in Gaza. We are tirelessly working towards this end to alleviate the suffering of the Palestinians and reach a peaceful resolution for the sake of the Palestinians and the region as a whole. We've also taken a look at the list of needs for the Palestinians, and the Kingdom of Bahrain supports all these needs and humanitarian aid, and we will still study them to announce what we will be supporting and providing. Thank you very much. Peace be upon you. Thank you, Doctor.
I may call Her Excellency Minister of Foreign Affairs, the Kingdom of Lebanon.
Thank you, esteemed Chair. We are grateful for His Majesty King Abdullah II, His Excellency President Al-Sisi, and His Excellency Secretary General Guterres for organizing this crucial conference. The Jordanian hospitality is impressive. While the human suffering in Gaza is beyond our worst imagination, the need for urgent action remains crystal clear. First, all sides need to respect international humanitarian law and implement the provisional measures of the International Court of Justice, which means, inter alia, that Israel must halt its operations in Rafah now. Also, Israel and Hamas must agree on an immediate ceasefire deal as soon as possible. For the Gazan people, who are in dire need of help and protection, and for the release of all remaining hostages. Israel and all others involved must make sure that all border crossings are open for aid, including commercial flows, and that that aid reaches all those in need wherever they are within the Gaza Strip. Against this background, the Netherlands has decided to make available another €13 million for humanitarian aid through different organizations, including UNRWA. Also, I would like to underline that Security Council Resolution 2720 is crucial and that the international community must keep supporting the efforts of Sigrid Kaag, the UN Senior Humanitarian and Reconstruction Coordinator for Gaza. It's deeply saddening that the organizations capable of alleviating suffering in Gaza are being attacked, blocked and undermined. And we must ensure that all aid workers can move freely and do their work in safety. As team chair, we must think about the day after the war and how we will rebuild Gaza with the Palestinian Authority back in charge. The Netherlands is setting aside 20 million euros for early recovery and reconstruction efforts. Thinking about a brighter future also means working towards a viable Palestinian state alongside a secure Israel, by working on reconciliation and fostering respect for each other's rights, needs and aspirations. Because that is the only way the Palestinians and Israelis can live together in peace. In conclusion, protecting civilians is both a moral imperative and a legal obligation, a non-negotiable responsibility that all parties must uphold. And therefore all parties should strive for an immediate ceasefire in line with the UN Security Council resolution. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Your Excellency. If I may call His Excellency the Foreign Minister of Malaysia.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Mr. Chairman, Malaysia joins the previous speakers commending the Islamic Kingdom of Jordan and the Arab Republic of Egypt for their leadership in this crucial initiative. We also thank Secretary General Guterres for driving this humanitarian conference and for his steadfast dedication to the Palestinian cause. Mr. Chairman, the unbridled genocide that is unfolding in Gaza has indeed paralyzed the urgently needed humanitarian response for Palestinians. Until there is an effective and permanent ceasefire and political solution, what we, the international community, could do is to stand in solidarity with the Palestinians and relieve their suffering. Thus, the holding of today's conference is not only timely, but necessary. Excellencies, as we discuss humanitarian response for Gaza, we must also review prevailing challenges, lest our efforts will be in vain. Several conditions must be taken into account to facilitate and ensure seamless flow of humanitarian assistance. The brutal reality on the ground is that there is still no guarantee for safe, secure and unhindered delivery of aid. Israel airstrikes had not only struck Malaysia's aid convoy, but has also demolished our distribution center, resulting in the death of volunteers and the destruction of life-saving consignments. These barbaric attacks did not and will not deter Malaysia from its humanitarian commitments. Excellency, in response to the dire humanitarian crisis in Gaza, the government of Malaysia, in collaboration with more than 50 national NGOs, has dispatched over 5,000 tons of vital aid to Gaza. We will continue our humanitarian support together with the UN and other partners. In doing so, we will take into account the outcome of today's deliberations by respective working groups. Excellency, we all can agree that it would be impossible for any immediate humanitarian response to materialize in the absence of permanent and effective ceasefire and political solution. As a matter of principle, Malaysia has always been a strong advocate for peace and stability. We will stand in solidarity with any genuine effort that promotes peace and settlement of conflicts. In this context, Malaysia welcomes the adoption of the United Nations Security Council Resolution 2720 35 on the three-phase proposal by United States yesterday. All states and stakeholders who wish to see a peaceful solution to the crimes against humanity and genocide must amplify their voices in supporting and sincere efforts towards truth. Earlier today, we also discussed extensively about recovery and rebuilding of Gaza. The UN Programme of Assistance to the Palestinian People, or PAPP, is still managing the removal of debris from 2004 conflict. One could only imagine how long it will take for the destruction from the ongoing crisis to be cleared. Basic infrastructures are necessary to support a comprehensive implementation of humanitarian response. As such, Malaysia calls upon stakeholders with the necessary resources and technology know-how to join in the efforts of rebuilding Gaza. Excellencies, in the long run, successful and effective humanitarian response for Gaza is conditional upon the following three main elements. First, we need a comprehensive humanitarian response, as well as recovery and reconstruction strategies that addresses the root causes, namely the denial of self-determination and the prolonged Israel illegal occupation and atrocities. Palestine's inherent right as a full member of the United Nations must be realized. Second, as the occupying power, Israel must be held accountable through a reparative approach in rebuilding Gaza and for the immense violations inflicted upon the Palestinians. Third, we must reinforce the United Nations role in carrying its humanitarian mandate. UNRWA must be empowered, supported and protected to enable it to deliver humanitarian assistance and immediate recovery in social infrastructures, including healthcare services and psychosocial support, and at scale. Excellencies, lastly, the conflict of Gaza has continued for far too long. Only through concerted international efforts we can save Gaza. Let our dreams for free Palestine live beyond today and beyond the words that we say. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Your Excellency. أتشرف بدعوة معالي وزير خارجية دولة الكويت الشقيقة السيد عبد الله اليحيى.
شكرا أخ الرئيس. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. والسلام على أشرف المرسلين سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. حضرة صاحب الجلالة الملك عبد الله الثاني.
Your Excellency, King Abdullah II, Mr. President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, President of Egypt, and the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, ladies and gentlemen, peace be upon you. I am going to start by thanking the Jordanian Kingdom and Egypt and the United Nations for the urgent humanitarian response for Gaza summit and their hosting and preparation of the summit. And I am going to thank the people and government of Jordan for their hospitality and their kind reception, in the hope that this meeting will come out with positive results to alleviate the suffering of the Palestinian brethren in Gaza. Ladies and gentlemen, Your Excellencies, the crisis, the humanitarian crisis being witnessed by the Palestinians has surpassed all expectation. There are no words to explain or describe the deterioration of the humanitarian crisis in Gaza. Another historical The Palestinians have suffered extremely at the hands of the Israeli occupation forces. We are seeing the blocking of delivery of humanitarian aid, which has worsened the humanitarian crisis as a result of this aggression. At the same time, I am calling for the international community to shoulder its responsibility to assist the Palestinians unconditionally. We are seeing the breaking of all international laws and jurisdiction by the Israeli occupation. Ladies and gentlemen, Excellencies, Kuwait has not spared any effort in assisting the Palestinian brethren. Kuwait has sent humanitarian aid and created airdrops which has dropped thousands of tons of humanitarian aid, food and medical relief for the Palestinian brothers. And we've also given $30 million to UNRWA for their functions and humanitarian role in Palestine. And we have also assisted with humanitarian aid both through air and land. In addition to this, we've also sent medical practitioners and medical convoys to the Gaza Strip in order to assist with medical needs in the area and assist the Palestinians. Kuwait has also used the Kuwait Development Fund till the 1st of April 2024, $200 million, which has been put aside for Gaza and development programs and projects in Gaza. Kuwait is taking its role and turn and calling for peaceful negotiations and the respect of humanitarian law and the right of the Palestinian civilians to have their own states, and the two-state solution of 1967 with the borders. We are calling once again for this and the international recognition of the Palestinian state by the United Nations and all international parties and institutions, and all calls for a ceasefire to spare the lives of innocent children, women and civilians, hoping that the international community support the Palestinians in reaching stability and a resolution to this war. Thank you very much. Peace be upon you.
If I may call His Excellency the Foreign Minister of Chile.
Thank you, esteemed Chair. I thank the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan, the Arab Republic of Egypt, and United Nations for organizing this very timely international conference. There are no words to describe the situation in Gaza, where the most affected are women and children. The action from the international community is urgently needed, not only by providing humanitarian assistance, but also by supporting the main parties to create a political horizon for the creation of a Palestinian state living side by side with Israel, and both in security and prosperity. Chile is the home of the largest Palestinian community outside the Middle East. Chile also hosts a smaller but important Jewish community. Both of them have contributed immensely to the richness of the Chilean social fabric. Chile has historically advocated for the peaceful resolution of disputes and the recognition of both Israel and Palestine as sovereign states. We have consistently supported the two-state solution with secure, internationally recognized borders according to United Nations resolutions and with full respect of the human rights of all of its inhabitants. Chile has promoted this stance in all relevant international fora, emphasizing the importance of peaceful coexistence, but also the need to put an end to the illegal occupation of the Palestinian territories. In response to the ongoing conflict, Chile's government has called for a full compliance with international law and international humanitarian law. We have condemned Hamas terror actions demanding the immediate and unconditional release of hostages. Likewise, Chile strongly condemns the indiscriminate and disproportionate attacks of Israel on civilians in Gaza, especially women and children. The principles of proportionality, distinction, humanity, and precaution must guide the use of force in legitimate defense. We demand Israel to comply with the provisional measures ordered by the International Court of Justice, particularly to cease military offensives in Gaza that could further harm its population. I recall that the International Court of Justice provisional measures are mandatory. Chile has referred the situation of Palestine to the International Criminal Court. Moreover, President Boric announced Chile's intervention in a case presented by South Africa against Israel to the International Court of Justice. We have also made contributions through the United Nations system to provide urgent humanitarian aid to Gaza's population. Additionally, we have worked to protect our nationals and their relatives in Palestine, granting for some cases temporary residence to family members of Palestinians in Chile. Efforts to alleviate the humanitarian crisis in Gaza and eliminate violence will only be effective if the United Nations Security Council resolutions and the International Court of Justice measures are complied with, leading to the realization of the two-state solution. This in accordance with the appropriate United Nations resolutions. We celebrate the approval by the Security Council of Resolution 2735, endorsing a Gaza ceasefire plan. Chile urges both Hamas and the Israeli government to comply in good faith with this resolution, emphasizing the need for the rule of law and reason to prevail. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Your Excellency. If I may call His Excellency Minister for Foreign Affairs of the Hellenic Republic.
Thank you, esteemed Chair. Thank you for timely convening this call for action from Jordan, His Majesty King Abdullah II, President Sisi, and Secretary General Guterres. Three issues. First, we need to broaden humanitarian assistance towards Gaza, and we have to do it immediately. We need to allow further crossing routes. We need to allow for more trucks, airdrops, and sea routes. We need to give more to the humanitarian aid. And finally, I will call for more emphasis on injured people and children who are going to suffer from post-trauma in the future. Secondly, we need an immediate reconstruction plan. We need to establish a clear path towards more housing units, essential supplies, and critical infrastructures. This has to be done today. We cannot wait for the ceasefire, because only under these conditions we can see for people to get back to their homes, because we do not have only forcible displacements, but we could also have a de facto displacement if people do not have the necessary premises in order to get back to their homes. So we need to have an immediate plan for the reconstruction. And third, we need to coordinate our activity towards the humanitarian assistance and the peace formula on an international level. We need broader participation of the United Nations, both in terms of the humanitarian assistance and in relation to the security on the spot. In this context, I propose that the Foreign Affairs Council of the European Union also that a joint task force between European Union and Arab foreign ministers is composed in order to push further in order to get the ceasefire and the humanitarian reconstruction. Finally, I would like to make a point that it is probably for the first time in history that we have such a universal call for immediate ceasefire and unconditional release of hostages. There hasn't been a single time in history that the whole world is united in this call, and I think we should just seize the moment. We have to endorse the President Biden's peace formula, which was enhanced also by the Security Council of the United Nations, and we need to immediately push forward in all possible terms in order to have this immediate ceasefire, and then to provide vision to the Palestine people, to provide sustainable vision for a Palestine state on the basis of the two-state solution and the resolutions of the Security Council tomorrow. Might be too late for this. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Your Excellency. If I may call His Excellency Minister of Foreign Affairs of Colombia.
Thank you very much. Your Excellencies, Minister of Foreign Affairs, Minister and Head of Delegations attending this determinant conference. I bring the message of peace and life, solidarity and support from President of Colombia, Gustavo Petro. We are very grateful to His Majesty King Abdullah II of Jordan, His Excellency Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, President of the Arab Republic of Egypt, and His Excellency Mr. Antonio Guterres, Secretary General of the United Nations, for convening such an important gathering today. And we are gathered here in order to address the deeply regrettable situation, a heartbreaking reality that demands immediate, collective and coordinated action by the entire international community. The Palestinian people today face genocide. We need to say that very clear. And the war is unequal, that has escalated to absurd levels. All of that compounded with the difficulties faced by aid agencies in bringing essential humanitarian supplies to Gaza. The human suffering is unacceptable and requires an urgent and effective response for the international community. Colombia is acting, but we need to act more, and we need more actions. Colombia, along with a significant number of countries from the region and the world, has remained vocal in the multilateral forum and insisted on the need to find a peaceful solution to the conflict, as well as supporting all United Nations resolutions that promote a lasting solution to the Palestinian question. We have made a supportive and constant and firm call for an immediate ceasefire, the release of hostages, and unimpeded access to humanitarian aid. Colombia supported the proceedings instituted by South Africa against Israel before the International Court of Justice for the violations of the 1948 Convention Against Genocide. We also expressed our support to the International Criminal Court prosecutor Karim Khan's decision to issue arrest warrants against 4 current leaders of the government of Israel and Hamas that have committed crimes against humanity. Colombia broke diplomatic relations with Israel as a sign of our condemnation of actions that constitute war crimes and violation of human rights and international humanitarian law. Because this is a precedent that cannot happen in the world. We need to comply, all of us, with the international humanitarian law, international human rights, and international public law. Yesterday, the UN Security Council approved an important resolution that have been mentioned here, 2735, proposed by the United States. We support that effort. I will encourage all of us to support it. This is a resolution in the right direction and is very crucial in this moment. Colombia also, and it's worth mentioning, supporting financially the work of the UN mission in Palestine, the UNRWA, because they need funding. Many of members of this organization have been killed, and we need to continue supporting financially the UNRWA. Also, we have designed a humanitarian assistance program to mainly benefit children and women. That program, led by the Colombian government, and we invite others to join, will be implemented in the following weeks. It is a moral and legal duty to act in solidarity for the most vulnerable people and to work tirelessly for a world where tolerance, peace, and mutual respect prevail. What is happening in Gaza is unacceptable. It is our duty to do everything necessary to protect life and peace and to avoid human suffering. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Your Excellency. تشرف بدعوة معالي وزير الدولة عضو مجلس الوزراء مستشار الأمن الوطني الدكتور مساعد بن محمد بن عبد الله العيبان.
شكرا مع الرئيس. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
In the name of God. Ladies and gentlemen and excellencies, peace be upon you all. I'm honored to bring forth King Salman bin Abdulaziz Al Saud's greetings and the Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman bin Abdulaziz. May God protect them, and I bring you their greetings and wishes for a successful summit, as well as King Abdullah II. I would like to thank you very much, as well as President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, President of Egypt, as well as the UN Secretary General, Mr. Antonio Guterres. Thank you very much for your joint invitation to this summit. What is being witnessed now by the Israeli aggression is now calling for us to come together to stop this humanitarian crisis and intensify international efforts to stop this aggression and call for the complete withdrawal of the Israeli occupation forces, as well as call for the increased humanitarian aid and assistance for the Palestinians and their safe return to their home and lands. We confirm the international community's responsibility to stop the Israeli aggression and the need for the international community to work towards coming to the two-state solution, which indicates that the Palestinians have the right to their state based on the 1967 borders with East Jerusalem as its capital. And we call the international community to condemn the Israeli occupation forces for their breaching of all international law and jurisdictions and all humanitarian law as well. Saudi Arabia is continuing its support to the Palestinian brothers as the Saudi kingdom has launched a drive to collect over 700 million Saudi riyals worth of aid and assistance to the Palestinians, as well as donated assistance, monetary and financial assistance to United Nations, UNRWA, as well as other organizations responsible and that collaborate with the United Nations in providing humanitarian aid for the Palestinians. We also welcome Norway as well as Spain and Ireland and Slovenia's recognition of the Palestinian state, and we call on all the other nations that have not done so to do so. And we will continue, God willing, to collaborate and cooperate with the international community to reach a solution to end this crisis and allow the permanent ceasefire and the resolution to a two-state solution. Once again, I'd like to thank you for this invitation and the efforts in the region to alleviate the humanitarian crisis that is being witnessed and lived by the Palestinians in the Gaza Strip. Hopeful that this summit will indeed achieve what it has set out to do. Peace be upon you.
أشكر معالي وزير الدولة مستشار الأمن الوطني بالمملكة العربية السعودية على كلمته وأعطي الكلمة الآن لمعالي السيد.
I now give Mr. Ahmed Abul-Ghait, the Arab League Secretary General, the floor. Thank you very much for the invite by Jordan, Egypt, and the United Nations to this very important meeting. If we are all here to see an end to the Israeli aggression and the end of these war crimes against the Palestinians, we know that the humanitarian crisis that has been lived by over 2 million Palestinians in Gaza is not waiting for the ceasefire, as it is a daily crisis that is being lived by the Palestinians, and it is our responsibility as humans to see how this genocidal war and starvation of the residents of the Strip and all the war crimes and genocidal war that we are witnessing over tens of thousands of people in Gaza. As we can see, the aggression's aim is to continue this genocidal war and destroy the region and the area and strip the area of any livability. It is our responsibility and our humanitarian responsibility to prevent this demonic plan. We're seeing that all the humanitarian institutions and organizations are unable to interfere effectively anymore. Even not a single humanitarian NGO or organization has been spared attacks. Even UNRWA, we're seeing a political Israeli aggression against them, even trying to cut off their funding. And this is very important for you to know, that without UNRWA and its very important role, the humanitarian situation in Gaza will completely deteriorate. This is the most important humanitarian organization that can actually get aid to the people that are in dire need of it, as well as provide services for the civilians in each and every age group. And here we are talking about the need to create safe passageways and pathways and roads, as well as seaports, to allow the delivery of this aid and assist them to get the aid to the people in dire need of it, according to the UN Security Council resolution. This is a very important role. Some can see that any discussion of a two-state solution is far from reach. However, it is very important to call for this, because this is what we are expecting, and this is what we have seen as a result of not reaching a two-state solution. This explosion has occurred, and now the future of the whole Palestinian cause and the political future has now been evaded as a result of not reaching a two-state solution sooner, with East Jerusalem as the capital of Palestine. Every step we take today must add towards this goal of reaching the two-state solution. Any effort, whether humanitarian or political or diplomatic, must be geared towards a two-state solution, as there is no other alternative to the two-state solution for security of the region. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Your Excellency, Secretary General of the Arab League. Now I give the word to the Islamic Cooperation Council, Mr. Hussein Taha. In the name of God, the Almighty, Your Excellency, the King,
Excellence, Monsieur le Président Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, Président de la République arabe d'Égypte, Excellence, Monsieur le Président Mahmoud Abbas, Président de l'État de Palestine, Excellence, Monsieur Antonio Guterres, Secrétaire général des Nations Unies, Majesté, Altesse et Excellence, Mesdames et Messieurs, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Je voudrais tout d'abord exprimer mes remerciements et ma grande gratitude au Royaume hachémite de Jordanie, à la République arabe d'Égypte et de l'Organisation des Nations Unies pour avoir invité et parrainé cette conférence, ainsi qu'à tous les pays d'organisation participants en consécration de leur détermination et leur engagement à s'acquitter de leurs responsabilités humanitaires envers la bande de Gaza. Nous sommes persuadés que cette conférence, qui intervient dans une conjoncture des plus sombres et des plus difficiles, offrira une occasion idoine pour faire le point sur les répercussions catastrophiques de l'agression israélienne brutale, ainsi qui se poursuit depuis voilà 8 mois dans la bande de Gaza. Renforcer la solidarité, la coopération et apporter le soutien nécessaire de la communauté internationale sur la plus grande échelle et l'exhorter à assumer pleinement ses responsabilités face aux défis grandissants dans la bande de Gaza et partout dans les territoires palestiniens occupés. Majesté, Altesse, Excellence, nous réitérons au niveau de l'OCI notre condamnation ferme de tous les actes de génocide commis par l'armée israélienne dans la bande de Gaza et renouvelons notre appel en faveur de la poursuite et du renforcement des efforts visant à parvenir à un cessez-le-feu immédiat, durable et global dans la bande de Gaza et à remettre l'idée à toutes les exactions, à mettre fin à toutes les exactions israéliennes dans les territoires palestiniens occupés, y compris à l'Aqsa Sharif et de Gaza, et demandons qu'elle soit respectée et mise en œuvre par Israël immédiatement. Majesté, Altesse, Excellence, face aux défis horribles du crime de génocide commis au quotidien par l'armée d'occupation israélienne, sans dissuasion politique, humanitaire ou juridique, nous tenons à affirmer qu'il est inacceptable que le peuple palestinien continue de subir sans relâche et de manière répétée les affres de la guerre, les calamités, les tragédies, les destructions, des déplacements et des souffrances humaines dans sa patrie et dans la diaspora. Par conséquent, nous nous devons tous d'assumer dans le cadre de nos responsabilités individuelles et communes le devoir de veiller au respect du droit international et à la consécration du développement, de reconstruction et des ressources d'urgence par la bande de Gaza. Je suis convaincu que les conclusions de cette conférence seront transformées en une vision commune, en un plan d'action global et apporteront une lueur d'espoir en ces temps difficiles. L'OCI et ses institutions demeureront un partenaire dans tous les efforts destinés à atténuer les souffrances du peuple palestinien, à renforcer sa résilience et à lui permettre de se renouveler ses droits légitimes. J'aimerais également souligner qu'une solution juste, durable et globale à la cause palestinienne requiert des efforts concertés pour lancer un processus politique irréversible sous les auspices multilatéraux et internationaux propres à mettre fin à l'occupation israélienne et à conduire à la création d'un État palestinien indépendant sur les frontières du 4 juin de 1967 avec pour capitale Al-Quds al-Sharif sur la base d'une résolution de la légitimité internationale et de l'initiative de paix arabe. Pour conclure, je voudrais exprimer mes remerciements et mon appréciation au royaume hachémite de Jordanie sous la conduite de Sa Majesté le roi Abdallah II pour tous les efforts déployés en faveur du succès de ces assises et pour l'hospitalité généreuse et l'accueil chaleureux, implorant Allah le Tout-Puissant de voir cette conférence atteindre ses nobles objectifs. Et wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
أشكر معالي أمين العام. Excellencies, due to the limited time we have left, I would like to reiterate our call for your Excellencies for the statement not to exceed 3 minutes. Thank you. Now I give the floor to His Excellency Lord Tariq Ahmad, Minister of State for Middle East of the United Kingdom.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Good afternoon. The terrible human cost of this conflict is clear. It is clear for the world to see. And today we are united in our determination to get aid to those in desperate need in Gaza. I am extremely grateful on behalf of the United Kingdom government to our hosts, His Majesty King Abdullah of Jordan, His Excellency President Sisi of Egypt, and the UN Secretary General Guterres for bringing us together in this vital mission. I was pleased to join a working group earlier this morning convened by my dear friends, the Foreign Minister of Jordan, Ayman Safadi, and US Under-Secretary General Griffiths, focused on overcoming the challenges of aid delivery and ensuring the protection of civilians. Addressing these challenges are vital, and I was encouraged by the serious practical proposals being advanced, as we've heard already, by key partners operating on the ground in Gaza. The United Kingdom is clear. We have a deal on the table to stop the fighting. We have a UN resolution agreed yesterday to end this war. It is now to act and deliver. Palestinians are suffering now more than ever, and we must now do our absolute utmost to alleviate their pain and suffering. In this regard, our partnerships are essential. With our £2 million contribution to the World Food Programme, the United Kingdom helped establish the Jordanian land corridor with His Majesty King Abdullah's vital leadership. Working with the United Nations and Jordan, we have also delivered food tents to Gaza through this vital corridor, and are now operating a field hospital run by UK Med that is treating over 100 patients a day. This corridor continues to play a pivotal role in our collective efforts. We are also announcing an additional £1 million for Jordan to get more medical supplies and prosthetics into Gaza using this route. I was in Jordan but a week ago discussing this directly with His Highness Prince Rashid. Along with this, though, we must do more. Israel must focus on allowing unhindered access through all land and maritime routes, whilst protecting civilians and humanitarian workers. And I join all others who have recognize the vital contribution of UN and other agencies, aid workers on the ground, to have the access, equipment, but also the safety and security to do their job. And ultimately, basic services to civilians in Gaza must resume immediately. In conclusion, this is a real moment for us all. Let us define the pathways needed. Let us allocate the responsibilities required, the timelines to deliver. We must ensure that this fighting ends, that Palestinian governance in Gaza and across the West Bank is strengthened, and we work unrelentingly until we see not just the vision but the reality of 2 states. We must remain united and steadfast in making this a reality, to bring peace for Israelis and Palestinians alike. Israel and Palestine, side by side, living together as neighbors in security, in peace. Wa akhiru da'wana anil hamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Shukran jazeeran.
I thank His Excellency Lord Tariq Ahmed, and now I give the floor to His Excellency Minister of Justice and Correctional Service of South Africa.
Chairperson, Excellencies, on behalf of South Africa, we sincerely thank our hosts for convening this high-level conference, which we welcome as an urgent and much-needed initiative. I convey our warm greetings from His Excellency President Cyril Ramaphosa, who had other commitments back home following our recent general elections. South Africa and the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan have long-standing fraternal relations born out of a special bond between our founding father, President Mandela, and King Hussein. Sadly, former President Mandela and King Hussein's primary concern then, which was the lack of peace, freedom, and global consciousness on the Palestinian situation, remain what His Majesty and other international leaders are concerned and preoccupied with today. South Africa welcomes the United Nations Security Council resolutions that endorses the three-phase ceasefire and the ICJ indication of the State of Israel in the case between South Africa and the State of Israel. South Africa calls on all parties to comply with the UN resolutions, the UN Security Council resolutions, and the ICJ indication. The State of Israel, as an occupying power, has a duty to allow unhindered access of humanitarian aid into Gaza. This is an international humanitarian law. There should be no exception, and Israel is not above international law. President, we recognize and express our support for the irrepressible role that the United Nations Relief and Works Agency of Palestinian Refugees in the Near Middle East is playing, UNRWA. The Kingdom of Jordan and Egypt have played in delivering aid in Gaza. We further welcome the appointment of the senior coordinator under UN Security Council Resolution 2720 and call on all states to fully support Ms. Sigrid Kaag to implement her mandate. It has been 6 months since the adoption of the UN Resolution 2720, and despite some progress, it remains insufficient as the implementation of the resolution continues to be elusive. The ongoing Israel defiance of UN resolutions and international law is hampering aid deliveries to Palestinians in dire need. All states are bound by international humanitarian law, and we cannot see why others see themselves above international law, like the State of Israel. Accountability must be called for. Furthermore, the Israel Defense Force regrettably continues to intensify its military operations. While we were still reeling from the attack on Rafah, we watched with horror as Nasrant refugee camp, a designated safe zone, suffered the single worst massacre committed by Israel occupation forces on 8 June 2024. This was an act which we have joined the international community in condemning in its strongest possible terms. In this regard, South Africa is leading international legal proceedings and welcomes the orders by the International Court of Justice to stop the Palestinian genocide currently unfolding. In addition to our ICJ court case, our government has approved a contribution of 50 million rands for humanitarian aid to Palestinians to be channeled through UNRWA. My country has also contributed to a UN Central Energy Fund with the hope that these much-needed contributions will go a long way in assisting the UN and other humanitarian organizations' interventions in Gaza. South Africa supports the efforts by the prosecutor of the International Criminal Court to hold accountable all responsible for genocide and massacre in the Gaza Strip. We will continue to support the humanitarian response in the long term, the reconstruction of Gaza so that Palestinians can live in peace and dignity. South Africa also supports the resolutions that came out today out of the working groups. I thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Now I give the floor to His Excellency Minister of International Development of Canada, Mr. Ahmed Hussein.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon to everyone. Bonjour tout le monde. On behalf of Canada, I bring greetings from Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and our government. And we thank His Majesty King Abdullah II of Jordan, His Excellency President Sisi of Egypt, and the Secretary General of the United Nations, Antonio Guterres, for organizing this important summit at this critical moment. Like all of you, Canada is of course gravely concerned about the dire humanitarian situation and crisis in Gaza. As we heard in the opening statements today, and after 8 months of war, Palestinian civilians are grieving the deaths of over 36,000 people. Over 100,000 people have been injured. This war must come to an end. Canada fully supports the proposed ceasefire and hostage release deal outlined by President Biden on May the 31st, 2024, and UN Security Council Resolution 2735 that passed last night, supporting this three-phased ceasefire plan. This resolution comes after the largest loss daily of Palestinian life to date in this war in the Nuseirat refugee camp. There is no time to lose. It is time for this war to end. The ceasefire deal is the necessary starting point. Since October 7th, Canada has committed $165 million to respond to the Gaza crisis, working with experienced humanitarian partners to deliver urgently needed support. Our support includes the recent construction of a field hospital in Rafah by the Red Cross. We welcome today's discussion on early recovery and reconstruction. It must be accompanied by a political framework that is grounded in the path, an irreversible path, to a two-state solution. In the meantime, we must begin ramping up psychosocial support to the traumatized Palestinian population, restoring basic services like education and healthcare, as well as water, energy, and telecommunications. Internet connectivity is critical as well. We cannot forget the vital role of Palestinian civil society. It survives in Gaza and it urgently needs our continued support. Women in particular must be supported as leaders, and we need to step up and support them both at the community level and at the household level. The Palestinian Authority are essential for this discussion. We must continue to strengthen the capacity of the Palestinian Authority and their role in Gaza. We also cannot ignore the deteriorating situation in the West Bank. We must stand united in calling for the full protection of Palestinian civilians facing displacement and violence on a daily basis in the West Bank. Canada stands ready to work with all of you, as we have been. We must bring this humanitarian tragedy to an end. We must restore dignity and hope to the Palestinian people and an end to this historic conflict. The people of Gaza deserve the chance to heal and rebuild their lives. Tomorrow must start today. Thank you. Merci beaucoup. Shukran jazeera.
Thank you, Your Excellency. أعطي الكلمة الآن لمعالي وزير الصحة في جمهورية الجزائر الديمقراطية الشعبية الشقيقة الأخ عبد الحق سايحي.
Of Health from Algeria, Minister Abdel Haq, in the name of God the Almighty. Ladies and gentlemen, Excellencies, allow me in my address to convey the greetings of the President Abdelmajid Tebboune and read his speech, and this is his speech. Your Excellency, Your Majesty, King Abdullah II, the King of Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan, Your Excellency, President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, the President of Egypt, ladies and gentlemen, the UN Secretary of General, Mr. Antonio Guterres. I was very happy to receive this invitation by King Jordan and my brother, President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, the President of Egypt, as well as by the UN Secretary General, Mr. Antonio Guterres, to participate in this conference, to reach practical solutions to alleviate the humanitarian suffering of the Palestinians. Ladies and gentlemen, as we meet today, still thousands of children, women, and the elderly are suffering and are facing the aggression of the Israelis, which is a black mark on the history of humanity. In our position as members of the UN Humanitarian Human Rights Council, we have called several times for the respecting of international law, and we have also collaborated with Egypt in providing humanitarian assistance, as well as collaborated with the Palestinian UNRWA to assist the Palestinians and get humanitarian aid delivered to them. Ladies and gentlemen, as we work towards our foreign policy, we have three aims we aim to achieve. Firstly, a ceasefire and the provision of the UN Security Council call for a ceasefire that must be immediately implemented for the Palestinian suffering to end. Secondly, the humanitarian aid delivery, the sustainable delivery of humanitarian aid to the Palestinians, again in accordance with UN resolutions. Thirdly, the need to reach a permanent resolution to the Palestinian cause, and we await the achievement of these aims. And we are using this opportunity to announce Algeria's provision of its second tranche of financial aid to the Palestinians. And we hope after this summit that the Palestinians' plight will be decreased during this very difficult time in humanitarian history. Thank you very much for your time. Peace be upon you all. Thank you, Minister of Health of Algeria.
Just again to remind everyone that please limit your intervention to 3 minutes. We need to close by 1800 hours. Her Excellency, Norwegian Minister of International Development, Ms. Anne, the floor is yours.
Excellencies, on behalf of the Government of Norway, allow me to start by recognizing the contributions of the organizers, Jordan, Egypt, and the UN, as well as the efforts of countries in the region and beyond to alleviate the suffering in Gaza. This crisis is not caused by a lack of will to provide humanitarian assistance. It is caused by parties to conflict unwilling to adequately protect civilians from the violence they unleash. It is caused by parties unwilling to let civilians access what they need to survive. International humanitarian law is crystal clear. It is a non-negotiable obligation of all parties to conflict to ensure that the basic needs of civilians are met, not after conflict ends, but while hostilities rage. Bombed and starved for 8 months, and with nowhere safe to flee, hostages still in captivity, relentless mental harm, hundreds of health and humanitarian workers killed, including almost 200 UN staff. It is a growing stain on our collective conscience. Humanitarians must be allowed to do their jobs safely. Chief among them, UNRWA, must be allowed to focus on its core mandate and be given the financial resources to help the people of Gaza. Thankfully, most donors have resumed contributions, but funding is still completely inadequate. Norway is planning to provide approximately $100 million in humanitarian funding for Palestine in 2024. We support the UN's unique role in coordinating the response in Gaza, making sure that every dollar is committed to support the population is put to the best use. Let me also emphasize that UN Security Council Resolution 1325 obliges us to pay particular attention to the unique needs of women and girls in situations of conflict. Norway strongly supports the Security Council's call last night. Civilians in Palestine desperately need a lasting ceasefire and the release of hostages, and further ahead, a political solution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Norway's recognition of Palestine on the 28th of May aims at giving a new momentum to the two-state solution. International support to Palestine should strengthen legitimate and moderate forces. The PA has to be included both in current humanitarian and later reconstruction efforts. We must support bringing about one Palestinian government in charge of all of Palestine, both Gaza and the West Bank. I thank you.
Thank you, Excellency. And now I give the floor to Her Excellency, Australia's Minister of Youth. Dr. Anne, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Australia thanks His Majesty King Abdullah for hosting this country. We add our thanks to His Excellency President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi and to the UN Secretary General for convening us all here together today. We agree with many who have spoken today. The widespread human suffering in Gaza is unacceptable. Australia welcomes yesterday's UN Security Council resolution, Resolution 2735, in support of a comprehensive ceasefire, a permanent end to hostilities, and the start of reconstruction in Gaza. That no country voted against the resolution underlines the international community's view that this war must end. And Australia will continue to work with countries that support peace to press for agreement to the proposal. Any delay will only see more lives lost. Australia reiterates its calls for the protection of civilians, for all parties to respect international humanitarian law, and for the immediate release of hostages. Israel must allow life-saving aid to flow at scale as ordered by the International Court of Justice. Australia has committed $62.5 million in humanitarian assistance to the region since the 7th of October 2023, including $41 million to support people affected by the Hamas-Israeli conflict. Our funding supports food, water, medicines and shelter, with a focus on women and children. Today, Australia pledges a further $10 million in humanitarian assistance through the World Food Programme to meet the dire need for food assistance in Gaza, bringing our total contribution to $72.5 million since this war started. We continue to monitor the humanitarian situation closely, and we stand ready to provide further support. This devastating crisis demonstrates the need for a political solution to the long-running Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Australia remains steadfast in our support for a two-state solution, a Palestinian state and the State of Israel, living side by side in peace and security within internationally recognised borders. We thank you. Shukran jazilan.
عفوا شكرا Your Excellency. معالي الوزير الأمين العام لرئاسة الجمهورية الموريتانية الإسلامية الشقيقة مولاي محمد تفضل.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين. اسمحوا لي أولا أن أنقل إليكم تحيات فخامة الرئيس محمد ولي الشيخ الغزواني رئيس الجمهورية الإسلامية الموريتانية، الذي كان حريصا على مشاركتكم هذا الاجتماع الهام، إلا أن بعض الالتزامات الملحة حالت دون ذلك، وقد شرفني بتمثيله في هذا المؤتمر الهام، وهذه كلمته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم، وصلى الله على النبي الكريم صاحب الجلالة الملك عبد الله الثاني بن الحسين ملك المملكة الأردنية الهاشمية، فخامة الرئيس عبد الفتاح السيسي رئيس جمهورية مصر العربية الشقيقة، أصحاب الفخامة رؤساء الدول، صاحب المعالي الأمين العام للأمم المتحدة السيد أنطونيو غوتيريس، أصحاب السمو والمعالي والسعادة ممثل الدول الأعضاء، أيها السادة والسيدات. أود في مستهل هذه الكلمة أن أتقدم إليكم بخالص الشكر وبالغ الامتنان لصاحب الجلالة الملك عبد الله الثاني بن الحسين، ولصاحب الفخامة الرئيس عبد الفتاح السيسي، وللأمين العام للأمم المتحدة السيد أنطونيو غوتيريس على الدعوة المشتركة التي وجهوها لي للمشاركة في هذا المؤتمر رفيع المستوى الذي يلتئم في الأردن الشقيق واحة السلم والاستقرار في وطننا العربي تحت عنوان الاستجابة الإنسانية الطارئة في غزة. أصحاب الجلالة والفخامة والسمو والمعالي، السادة والسيدات، غزة جرح نازف في قلب أمتنا العربية، ووصفة عار تلاحق الضمائر الحرة في العالم، الذي يتفرج منذ 9 أشهر على أول حرب إبادة جماعية ممنهجة وموثقة بالصور والصوت في تاريخ البشرية، ولا يحرك ساكنا لإيقافها ومساءلة مرتكبيها. غزة المأساة الإنسانية غير المسبوقة التي لا يلوح في أفقها اليوم سوى المزيد من القتل والتدمير والتشريد والتجويع. غزة المعاناة الشديدة لأكثر من 2.3 مليون فلسطيني، والتي تفاقمت مأساة مواطنها العزل منذ بدء العمليات العسكرية في رفح، وما أسفرت عنه من تقتيل وتهجير قسري في ظل غياب الأماكن الآمنة والغذاء والماء والمأوى والدواء. غزة التي لا يجد مواطنها مفرا من الموت والجوع إلا إليهما، تحتاج بالفعل لهذه المبادرة العاجلة من الأشقاء ومن الأمم المتحدة للتضامن معها وبحث أنشع الوسائل وأعجلها لإغاثتها. ومن هنا يأتي دعمنا القوي لهذا اللقاء، والذي يعكس الروح الإنسانية والتضامن العالي القائمين عليه، مؤكدين على أهمية تضافر الجهود الدولية لإغاثة الشعب الفلسطيني الشقيق. ونثمن في هذا الإطار النداء العاجل الذي أطلقته منظمة الأمم المتحدة لجمع 2.8 مليار دولار أمريكي في الوكالة الإنسانية لتنفيذ خطة استعجالية
pour exécuter l'aide humanitaire afin d'être acheminée à la bande de Gaza. Permettez-moi de vous rappeler que la Mauritanie exprime toujours sa solidarité avec le peuple palestinien frère dans cette situation, cette tragédie tout à fait désastreuse à cause de ces agressions israéliennes brutales contre le peuple palestinien qui, bien sûr, viole le droit international. Nous essayons toujours d'alléger la souffrance palestinienne
والدائم لإطلاق النار وعودة
Et
النازحين إلى
nous appelons toujours à un cessez-le-feu et à ce que les Palestiniens se retournent à leur place.
ما نهاية المأساة فإنها ستظل مرهونة بإيجاد حل عادل.
La tragédie humaine qui se trouve dans la bande de Gaza va être finie par une solution juste à travers la solution en deux États basée sur les territoires qui sont occupés en 1967 par Israël. Nous exprimons aussi notre compréhension à cette solidarité croissante de la part de la communauté internationale et qui ont été bien sûr révélées au cours de cette conférence. Et nous, en fin de compte, souhaitons tout le bien au peuple palestinien au monde entier.
Now, His Excellency Malta's Minister for Social Policy and Children's Rights, Dr. Khalzan. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Chair. May I start first by thanking His Majesty, the Presidents, Secretary General, and all of you present here. Although I probably hail from the smallest country around this table or conference, please rest assured that we have been, we are still, and we will remain a strong voice for peace. We have done this at the United Nations Security Council, we have done this within the EU, we have been as a country one of the very first to call for an immediate and permanent ceasefire in Gaza. As a country, we do believe that violence, hatred and aggressions tend to create problems, but does not solve them. And the issue we face here goes beyond taking sides. It is an issue whether we believe in humanity itself. We need to choose. Are we ready to accept the killing of tens of thousands of civilians, the deliberate attack on human aid workers, destruction of health and educational facilities? Are we ready to accept a practice of over 1,000 years ago during the Middle Ages of weaponizing famine? That is the question we need to face. It is not a question who is right or who is wrong. It goes beyond that. It is, Excellencies, we are at a crossroads. We need to really decide whether we believe in justice, we believe in a social order, whether we believe in a world order, or are we ready to accept the original law, where might is right. And I strongly believe that we should not go down that road. As a country, we strongly believe that not only must we solve the immediate humanitarian crisis, the reconstruction, but we must also provide a final destination for the Palestinian people. My country was a rapporteur for the Palestinian people's inalienable rights within the UN for a number of years. We do believe that the only solution will be a two-state solution where the inalienable rights of the Palestinian people are respected, are honored, and in a peaceful relationship with neighboring Israel. I would like to end on a note, a quote rather. Leo Tolstoy once wrote, "When we feel our own pain, it means we are alive. When we're succeeding in feeling the pain of others, we are human." And the choice is clear. Are we, as an international community, happy to be just alive, or are we ready, are we willing to become more human? I thank you for the honor and privilege to have me representing my country here. Thanks once again.
Thank you, sir. I now give the floor to His Excellency, Iceland Minister of Education and Children, Mr. Dadason. The floor is yours, sir.
Excellencies, I want to start by thanking His Majesty King of Jordan, the President of Egypt, and the Secretary General of the UN for hosting this important and very timely conference. It is crucial that we come together to strengthen our collective response to the humanitarian tragedy unfolding in Gaza and start paving the way towards a more peaceful and stable future for the people of Israel and Palestine. As we have discussed today, the task at hand is enormous. We are faced with one of the worst humanitarian crises in recent years, which is bound to leave a permanent mark on the people of Gaza. We commend the work of the United Nations, UNRWA, WFP and other humanitarian actors who have pursued their critical efforts despite the almost impossible conditions on the ground. From my point of view as Minister of Children Affairs, it's been especially heartbreaking to witness the catastrophic toll this conflict has taken on children and youth. As UNICEF has highlighted, there are no safe spaces in Gaza. All of Gaza's children have been subjected to the traumatic horrors of war with life-lasting consequences. Not only can the killing, maiming, or taking children as hostages never be justified, their unimaginable suffering and deprivation also threatens to undermine peace and trust between the people of Israel and Palestine for generations to come. Humanitarian access and enhanced humanitarian assistance is crucial. Children now dying from hunger and lack of health care and medicine is a fact that has to be stopped. When it comes to plans for recovery, reconstruction and reform, it is critical that the needs and rights of children will not only be carefully taken into consideration. Children have to be at the center of all reconstruction plans. How we help the young generation deal with the trauma will be the best measurement of how strong the foundation of the reconstruction will be. Iceland will make an additional contribution to UNRWA this week, almost doubling its core money. Ultimately, all measures must be taken to stop this vicious cycle of violence and revenge and to prevent further violence against children. Iceland has long called for an immediate ceasefire, a surge in humanitarian aid and the release of all hostages. All parties to the conflict need to comply with international law and the resolutions passed by the UN Security Council. It's also critical that Israel abide by orders of the International Court of Justice. We strongly support all mediation efforts and the peace plan presented by President Biden as outlined in the resolution passed yesterday in the Security Council. It is critical that both parties to the conflict urgently implement this resolution. The reform agenda put forward by the Palestinian government promises to lay the foundation for democracy, human rights and the rule of law in Palestine. To succeed, they will need the full support of the international community and clear focus on the prosperity of future generations. Even though Iceland is a small country, we will do what we can. Having recognized Palestine in 2011, Iceland will seek ways to support the implementation of this plan, including through UNRWA and other UN agencies, the World Bank and grassroots organizations, of which Iceland is committed supporter. It is also essential that we take Israel's legitimate security concerns into account, as the horrors of the 7th of October have left Israelis living in greater fear than ever before. At this point, courage and leadership is needed to make hard and challenging decisions that must eventually overcome the deep grievances, distrust and anger that has been shown over decades and culminated in this tragic war. We must insist that children's rights are respected and prioritized immediately. Time is running out for children of Gaza. We must insist that this horror, that is their reality, is stopped, and rights of children are respected both in Gaza and Israel. This will be the key to any possibility of creating a future of peace, stability and prosperity.
Thank you. Thank you, Excellency. معالي وزير الدولة وزير الشؤون الخارجية والهجرة والتونسيين بالخارج في الجمهورية التونسية الشقيقة الأخ منير حسين، تفضل.
أصحاب السمو والفخامة، أصحاب المعالي والسعادة، حضرات السيدات والسادة، يسعدني بداية أن أنقل تحيات فخامة رئيس الجمهورية قيس سعيد وخالص شكره إلى قيادتي المملكة الأردنية الهاشمية وجمهورية مصر العربية على صبرهما وجهودهما القيمة من أجل وقف العدوان الغاشم على غزة ووضع حد للمعاناة المروعة وغير المسبوقة التي يواجهها الشعب الفلسطيني الأبي، وإلى معالي الأمين العام للأمم المتحدة لما يبديه من حرص على تفعيل دور المنظمة الأممية وأحياء القيم التي تأسست من أجلها في اتجاه رفع إحدى أفظع المظالم الإنسانية في تاريخنا المعاصر وتمكين الشعب الفلسطيني الشقيق من حقه في الحياة وفي تقرير مصيره. يتابع العالم بانشغال شديد وألم كبير ما يتعرض له المدنيون الفلسطينيون في الأراضي الفلسطينية المحتلة منذ 8 أشهر من جرائم ضد الإنسانية وحرب إبادة جماعية. لا تزال قوات الاحتلال الغاشم وعصابات مستوطنيها يمعنان في ارتكابها وانتهاجها في كل من قطاع غزة والضفة الغربية في انتهاك صارخ وغير مسبوق لكل المواثيق الدولية والقيم الإنسانية
national instruments as well as humanitarian law and human values, and this is unacceptable, and the genocide is going on up till now, and there is also the siege on Gaza Strip and targeting it systematically, preventing the Palestinian from enjoying his life through the destruction of hospitals and all infrastructure, as well as depriving him from access to water, medicine and fuel, to turn Gaza Strip into an unliving place where there is poverty, disease, impediment, to make the Palestinians in front of one choice, either to be evacuated and dissolve his just historical cause or to die in Gaza Strip. This unprecedented humanitarian crisis faced by the people in Gaza Strip and the pain won't be forgotten, and it accelerated the time of truth that the international powers should bravely face. And they need to be wise enough and enjoy conscience and remember the values of justice to end this injustice. Till when the whole world would test the patience of the Palestinians and his worrying about their position towards this cause. The international community needs than any time before to endure its responsibility and to force itself to act and prevent the acts of the Israelis and prevent his terrorist attacks that targeted the Nusayrat camp recently, and to make them achieve ceasefire and implement international resolutions and provide all needed guarantees to protect the Palestinians, and to open all checkpoints, in particular Rafah checkpoint, to allow humanitarian aid to get into the Strip without any conditions. At the end of my speech, I would like to renew my emphasis that Tunisia's stance fully supports the Palestinians and his struggle to restore his just historical rights in establishing the Palestinian state with East Jerusalem as its capital. And we express the fact that we are looking forward to the conscience and the awareness of the international community to be up till this important moment when the just Palestinian cause is the real criterion to prove its desire to build a more just, humane international order. Thank you, and peace be upon you. Peace be upon you.
القوات الإسرائيلية تواصل مطاردة مئات
الدخان الأسود الكثيف المتصاعد من كل قبل لحظات كنا نتابعه لعله جرى.
الآن يتم استهداف
أهلنا في فلسطين محتاجين نقف جنبهم كتف في كتف في الوقت ده، وعشان كده
مؤسسة حياة كريمة هتساهم في دعم أهلنا في فلسطين بكل المساعدات الطبية والغذائية الممكنة. شاركنا في دعم ومساندة أهالي فلسطين من خلال التبرع على الحسابات التالية: كتفنا في كتف أهلنا في فلسطين.